Hi everyone, welcome back to Books the House Down. My name's Colleen. I'm going to be talking about the 8 books that I read in February. If I sound a little nasally, a little sore throaty, it's because I am. February and I guess March now, I've just been getting sick left, right, and center. Like I said in some of my previous videos that I work with kids, or have I mentioned it? I'm pretty sure that I did. I work with kids and they're all snotty right now. And yeah, that's kind of gross. In turn, I ended up getting sick. I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold, so excuse my voice. Yeah. So I read 8 books in February. February's obviously Black History Month, and so all the books that I read were books by Black authors. I read books by Black authors all throughout the year, but I really wanted to hone in on that this month and really highlight the amazing writing and stories told by Black writers. And so yeah, I'm gonna talk about those, and I have some of them here, and some of them I did have to return to the library, so we'll just like insert a picture either here or here. So yeah, let's dive in. The first book that I read is my love, Jamaica Kincaid, a book called My Brother. Wow, what an amazing start to the reading month of February. I truly enjoyed this book, like I do with most Jamaica Kincaid books. So I'll just read the little blurb on the back. Jamaica Kincaid's brother, Devin Drew, died of AIDS on January 19th, 1996, at the age of 33. Kincaid's incantory, poetic, and often shockingly, whenever I feel like I have to read on camera, it's like I don't know how to read. Shockingly frank recounting of her brother's life and death is also a story of her family on the island of Antigua, a constellation centered on the powerful, sometimes threatening figure of the writer's mother. Kincaid's unblinkingly record of a life that ended too early speaks volumes about the difficult truths at the heart of all families. So right off the bat, you know that her brother ends up dying of AIDS in 1996. Which in Antigua, which is really like a really harrowing story, because at the time, obviously, there was not a lot of research towards AIDS and there was a huge stigma. I'm just pulling up notes that I have. This book touches on family relationships, family obligations, parental relationships, sibling relationships, health and access to healthcare, the stigma of AIDS. Yeah, this was a really great read. I think one of my favorite Kincaid books. I'm looking over my stack of Kincaid books, and yeah, I think this is one of the top books out there. I don't really know what else to say other than like, please read it. I don't want to give too much away because I feel like if I say too much, I feel like I might just give the whole story away, and I don't want to do that. But yeah, again, I don't know, read it. The next book that I read is Assembly by Natasha Brown. I'll put a picture here or here. I returned the book back to the library. Big fan of the library. And so I'm just gonna read the description off my laptop here. Coming of age in the credit crunch. Be civil and hostile in a hostile environment. Step out into a world of go-home bands. Go to Oxbridge, get an education, start a career. Do all the right things. Buy a flat, buy art, buy a sort of happiness. But above all, keep your head down. Keep quiet and keep going. The narrator of Assembly is a Black British woman. She's preparing to attend a lavish garden party at her boyfriend's family estate, set deep in the English countryside. At the same time, she is considering the careful assembled pieces of herself as the minutes tick down and the future beckons. She can't escape the question, is it time to take it all apart? Yeah, so Doesn't that just sound amazing? So this book, it's a really short book, and it's really beautifully written. They really did a horrible cover with the paperback version. The hardcover is really beautiful. I'll show the hardcover here, and then I'll show the paperback version. Disgrace. I hate when they do that. When they make the paperback versions like so much uglier than the hardbacks. Crime, criminal. So this book explores like themes of race, racism, class, capitalism, being Black in Britain. Her partner, so she's a Black woman, and her partner is a white man who has like this legacy in his family that he kind of like has to uphold, and it's her kind of just finding her place in the world and dealing with a lot of like microaggressions and just navigating the world as a young Black woman. And wow, what a short but powerful book. Highly recommend this. And the third book that I read this month is actually a book of poems by Warsan Shire called Bless the Daughter Raised by a Voice in Her Head. Really short but beautiful poetry book. Warsan Shire is such a talented poet. I've been following her for a while now. I was really involved in the poetry and slam poetry scene in Toronto, like almost, I want to say 10 years ago now. So like 2013, 2014. And Warsan Shire was one of the poets I was like really obsessed with at the time, and still am, because her writing is just so brilliant. So she's worked with so many amazing artists, including Beyonce on Lemonade, and Black is King as well. But yeah, with our first full-length poetry collection, Warsan Shire introduces us to a young girl who, in the absence of a nurturing guide, makes her own way toward womanhood. Drawing from her own life, as well as pop culture and news headlines, Shire finds vivid, unique details in the experiences of refugees and immigrants, mothers and daughters, Black women, and teenage girls. In Shire's hands, lives spring into fullness. This is a noisy life full of music and weeping and surahs and sirens and birds. This is a fragrant life full of blood and perfume and shisha smoke and jasmine and incense. This is polychrome life, full of henna and moonlight and lipstick and turmeric and coal. The long-awaited collection from one of our most exciting contemporary poets, this book is a blessing, an incantory celebration of resilience and survival. Each reader will come away changed, which is very true. My partner is currently reading this book, and she's having a really fun time with it. I don't usually read poetry. When I do, I think I'm really particular about it. And yeah, this is just amazing. That was Warsan Shire's book. The next book that I read was Robyn, Maynard, and Leanne Betasamosake Simpson's book called Rehearsals for Living. I did this as a buddy read with Iggy from Literary Iggy. She apologized to me because she's in school right now, so it took her a little bit longer than me to finish it, which is completely fine. And I was like, don't worry, girl, take your time. You are literally a student in school and have to do so many other readings. But yeah, this is a nonfiction book written as letters between two friends, so Robyn and Leanne, during the height of the pandemic in Canada. And I'm pulling up my notes again because I blank out whenever I film, apparently. This book talks about Canadian policies, racism, colonialism, global warming, and like the overall crisis that directly affects the lives of Indigenous and Black people. This book was really beautiful. Not only did it talk about all those issues, so Robyn being a Black woman living in Canada and Leanne being an Indigenous woman living in Canada, and so it touches upon like the knowledge and the experiences of both groups, but it also was just beautifully written as two friends that really, you know, can't see each other during the pandemic, so they're writing these letters trying to stay safe. They have a high regard for each other. They have so much care and love and wisdom to share with one another. This book meant a lot to me because it showed Canadian politics, Toronto politics. They talk about some of the events that I went to, some of the protests that I went to, and really harrowing moments that happened in the city. And yeah, what a beautiful piece of work. When the world entered pandemic lockdown in spring 2020, Robyn Maynard, influential author of Policing Black Lives, and Leanne Betasamosake Simpson, renowned artist, musician, and author of Nupiming, The Cure for White Ladies, which is a book that Iggy really liked as well, and I think I want to give that a read now. Anyways, Nupiming began writing each other letters, a gesture sparked by a desire for kinship and connection in a world shattering under the intersecting crises of pandemic, police killings, and climate catastrophe. These letters soon grew into a powerful exchange about where we go from here. Rehearsals for Living is a captivating and visionary work, part debate, part dialogue, part lively and detailed familial correspondence between two razor-sharp writers. By articulating to each other Black and Indigenous perspectives on our unprecedented here and now, and reiterating the long disavowed histories of slavery and colonialization that have brought us to this movement, Maynard and Simpson create something new, an urgent demand for a different way forward, and a poetic call to dream up other ways of orderly earthly life. Yeah, wow. This book was so beautifully written. I have so many things underlined here. I just came to a random page and I underlined, all world endings are not tragic. There are some world endings that I am comfortable with. Some versions of this world need to end, and indeed should have never begun in the first instance. Some worlds, after all, depended on the ongoing violent, always racial and gender differentiated foreclosures of Otherworld. Yeah, wow, just beautiful. Give this a read, get yourself some knowledge, support Black and Indigenous folks always. Yeah, read it with a friend. Also, I really like that I read this with Iggy, just like going back and forth about like what resonated for us, and yeah, really cool. What a fun book to read with a friend. Moving on, the next book that I read is Communion by the well-loved Bell Hooks. This is the second Bell Hooks book that I've read. Yeah, the first book that I read was All About Love. I didn't know that it was part of like a 3-book series, and I think I skipped the middle book because I think it goes All About Love, another book, and then Communion, which is fine. Renowned visionary and theorist Bell Hooks begins her exploration of the meaning of love in American culture with the critically acclaimed All About Love, New Visions. She continued her national dialogue with the best-selling Salvation, Black People in Love. That's the second book that I haven't read and now I want to read. Now, Hooks culminates her triumph trilogy of love with Communion, The Female Search for Love. Intimate, revealing, provocative, Communion challenges every female to courageously claim the search for love as the heroic journey we must all choose to be truly free. In her trademark commanding and lucrative language, Hooks explores the ways ideas about women and love were changed by feminist movement, by women's full participation in the workforce, and by the culture of self-help. Communion is the heart-to-heart talk every woman, mother, daughter, friend, and lover needs to have. Bell Hooks, what else is there to say about her? Bell Hooks and I have the same top 3. We have the same birthday, so September 25th. So she's a Libra, and my moon is in Gemini and my rising is Sagittarius, but Bell Hooks is switched, so her moon is in Sagittarius and her rising is in Gemini, which is so cool. What a cool person to be a birthday twin with. But yeah, Bell Hooks, I want to gift this to every woman that I know, every married woman that I know. There are some things that resonated with me and then some things that didn't, but I think that just happens with any book that you read, especially like a nonfiction, so-called like self-help book. I think this falls under self-help. But yeah, there were some really beautiful quotes, some really beautiful moments, and then others where I'm just like, yeah. She does touch upon like lesbianism a bit in this, which is cool, because I was like, oh, is this gonna be like a man and woman and we're sticking to the gender roles here? But it's not. But yeah, well, it was interesting. I think I enjoyed All About Love a little bit more, but who's to say that this isn't for you? So give it a try. That's Communion. I read is Memorial by Bryan Washington. That is a book that I returned from the library, so I'll put the picture either here or here. A funny and profound story about family in all its strange forms, joyful and hard-won vulnerability, becoming who you're supposed to be, and the limits of love. Benson and Mike are two young guys who live together in Houston. Mike is a Japanese-American chef at a Mexican restaurant, and Benson's a black daycare teacher, and they've been together for a few years. Good years, but now they're not sure why they're still a couple. There's a sex, sure, and the meals that Mike cooks for Benson, and well, they love each other. But when Mike finds out his estranged father is dying in Osaka, just as his Japanese mother, Misuku, arrives in Texas for a visit, Mike picks up and flies across the world to say goodbye. In Japan, he undergoes an extraordinary transformation, discovering the truth about his family and his past. Back home, Mitsuko and Benson are stuck living together as unconventional roommates, an absurd domestic situation that ends up meaning more to each other than they ever could have predicted. Without Mike's immediate pull, Benson begins to push outwards, realizing he might just know what he wants out of life and have the goods to get it. Both men will change in ways that will either make them stronger together or fracture everything they've ever known, and just maybe they'll all be okay in the end. This book was good. It was okay. I thought I was really gonna love it. And Carly from the YouTube channel UnCarly, who's so funny, you should go follow her. She really enjoyed this book, and I thought I was also gonna really enjoy this book, and I did, but I didn't love it. I think I really was hyping it up, and so when I finished it, I was like, huh, interesting. But I still really enjoyed it. It was also interesting because, oh, I wish I had the copy to check this, but I believe that one of the characters, Mike, ends up saying like the N-word, and he's not black. He's the Japanese character, and I was like really like thrown off by that. I was like, was that necessary? But Bryan Washington is obviously a black author, so that was like a choice for that to happen. I think it just kicks into the narrative that like Mike is kind of a yucky person. So yeah, I don't know. This book was interesting for sure. I really enjoyed the aspects where Benson was talking about the ins and outs of working as a daycare teacher, because that's me as well. So that was interesting, and the dynamic between Benson and Mike's mom was really interesting. I felt really awkward reading it. Awkward vibes. Imagine staying with like your partner, your long-term partner's mother that you've like never met before, and she like barely can speak English, and she's like taking up space in your apartment. Yeah, it made me feel awkward. But yeah, it was an okay read. It was an okay read. I want to read more of Bryan Washington's work. Give him another shot, you know? 2 books that I read that I also thought were okay. This one is Jamaica Kincaid's The Autobiography of My Mother. Kincaid, amazing writing as always. I don't know, there's something about her writing that I can just like sit down with and resonates with me, and I just like fly through it. I gotta say, I don't think this is one of my favorite Kincaid books. Maybe it like struck a vein. Maybe it struck a vein in me that I didn't like. It made me feel a little uncomfy. So this story is about Sula Claudette Richardson, daughter of a Carib mother and half Scot, half African father, grows up motherless in the care of her father's laundress. Haunted by loneliness and emotional bereft, she is a child who revels in sensuality, rich colors, earthly smells, and silken textures. She will be seduced as a schoolgirl and enter a passionate affair with a stevedore, and marry an English doctor whose first wife is said to have poisoned. But her search for knowledge about her Carib mother that becomes her obsession. Piecing together a portrait of the woman she has never seen, she imagines her mother meeting her father. She imagines her life and her feelings. She imagines her as part of a dying race, and looks for herself within the picture of this most lush, enigmatic of Jamaica Kincaid's novels, a stunning, spare, and magnificent work of art about race, sex, and love. Yeah, so it talks about that. It talks about the main character whose mom died in childbirth, giving birth to her, so she doesn't grow up with a motherly figure. Her dad kind of just sends her off to live with someone else, and she's raised by another woman who has many other children under her care. For a bit, her dad remarries and takes her back, and she grows up with half siblings. Just like a really harrowing story. This, like, just so many awful things happened to this character. I think it takes a look on like what it's like to not be parented and to not have mother, and she's like trying to fill the spaces and the stories of her mother through like living her own life and trying to figure out, just trying to grow up and figure it out. There were a lot of creepy relationships with way older men that made me feel really uncomfortable. Yeah, I think the reason why maybe I didn't enjoy it so much was because it was so heartbreaking, and I really felt for this poor girl. And yeah, just reading it, I was like, oh. So yeah, beautiful writing as always. Give it a shot. But yeah, not one of my most favorite Kincaid novels. Not because it wasn't good, it was because it's kind of heavy on the heart. So there's that. And the last book that I read is Theory by Dion Brand. Dion Brand is a Canadian author who I really enjoy and love. Theory's premise is deceptively simple. Throughout the prisms of 3 love affairs, our hapless narrator struggles to complete an impossibly ambitious graduate thesis. If only the narrator were not so distracted by actual humans, above all, by 3 enticing and very different women who arrive one after the other. Each of these lovers in turn becomes muse and anti-muse, delaying the gratification of the narrator's one true obsession, the completion of the ever more unwildly thesis. Sharply observed and funny, yet underpinned by melancholy, Theory disarms us, capturing something complex and true about contemporary life, about identity and self, influence and originality, love and creativity, and what can and cannot be articulated in words. Theory is a gorgeous, note-perfect novel of ideas about passion and the passion for ideas by a writer at the height of her powers. Oh, I read this entire book being like, and I was going to talk about today being like, yeah, they don't mention this writer, the writer's identity, and I think that's really cool. Like, they don't really talk about the gender, but they date 3 women, so I'm reading it as a queer novel. Like, in my head, I was like, yeah, the writer is definitely a woman in relationship with women and talking about that and talking about trying to complete their thesis. And it just says here, by a writer at the height of her powers. So, right? Do they mean writer as in like Dion Brand, or do they mean writer as like the writer that's writing like in the book? Oh my god. Yeah, I honestly read this as a queer novel. Each chapter is written about the woman that the person is dating. Really interesting. It takes place in Toronto, which is the city that I live in. So I got a lot of the references, knew where a lot of the places that they were talking about were. And yeah, what a cool concept of a book. Dion Brand is incredible. There's Theory. Okay, so those are all the books that I read. Here's my little stack minus the 2 that have been returned to the library. Yeah. I planned on doing a vlog and none of that went as planned. And so The file is corrupt. The vlog's not happening. If I can somehow manage to get it working, I'll post a really late February vlog. But other than that, those are the books I read. What are you reading? Have you read any of these books? Did you enjoy it? Does any of the sorry. Do any of these books sound like something you want to pick up? Yeah, let me know in the comments below. I am currently reading Pisces because it's Pisces season by Melissa Broder. I am this much through with it and I'm really loving it. I'm still awkward in front of the camera, still trying to figure this out, still trying to describe these books in a way that makes sense. I'm really bad at that, but we're trying new things in 2023. So anyways, yeah, talk to me in the comments below. Bye.